The 2025 Formula One season is shaping up to be a really interesting season, and part of that is because of the amount of rookies we have this year. It's been a very long time since we have had this many exciting rookies. Some of them, like Antonelli, are coming behind with them a ton of hype, and other ones seem to be already fighting for their drive for the season, like Doohan. So with this amount of rookies, there's a lot of excitement to be had, but which rookies am I most excited about, and which rookies are you most excited about? Let's get into that. Hello everybody, my name is Michael and welcome back to Last to First. Since I started watching Formula One over a decade ago, this is the most amount of rookies I've ever seen come into the sport during one season, and it's really crazy to see how much of a changing of the guard there is in Formula One right now, but I think we are in good hands with some of these up-and-coming drivers. So let's get into my most excited rookie of 2025, and I think a lot of people will share the same sentiment, and that is Kimi Antonelli. He most definitely has the most hype behind him of any of the drivers. He's been really touted as the next big thing since his early karting days, and he was scooped up by Mercedes at just age 12, which is really insane that he's already been a part of the Mercedes family since he was very young, and he's still only 18 now, so another similar Max Verstappen level rise, but will he be able to reach the heights that Max Verstappen has? Only time will tell with that. But Kimi Antonelli has really done a tremendous job in his junior career up until now. He had back-to-back championships in the karting European Championship in 2020, 2021. He won a couple F4 championships, won Formula Regional, and the Middle East Regional Championships. Really, the only year where he hasn't had major success was in F2, where he finished 6th. He did show certainly signs of promise, but his and Bearman's results seem to be hindered by Prema's lack of success with the new car in 2024. So is that down to Antonelli struggling, or is it down to just mostly Prema? It was kind of a weird year in Formula 2, so it was kind of tough to judge. Bearman had an even worse season, and that was his second year, so definitely an interesting F2 season. But yeah, I think all of that success in the junior categories is reason to have some hype for Antonelli and believe that he might be a big superstar in Formula One. I think everyone's going to be really intrigued to see how he does with all the hype behind him. Really, the question mark for about him is if the hype will live up to reality or if the pressure will just be too much for him. Of course, we saw him crash in Italy, and will we see more of that, or will we see some glimpses of greatness, or will we see a true superstar in the making? Fortunately enough for him, I think Mercedes will give him a lot more time to develop than, say, Lawson or Hadjar at Red Bull. Mercedes is really invested. They believe in him. They want him to succeed, and they're going to have his back if he does struggle early on. It'll also be, of course, really interesting to see how he fares against George Russell in his first season. Even beating him on occasion will show that he has great speed and great potential, and that would make for a pretty standout first year if he is able to beat Russell on occasion. I'm certainly expecting Russell to beat Antonelli pretty convincingly over the course of the season, but if he is the star that people believe he is, then he will show some really great signs throughout the year, and I'm most definitely excited to see what he does for the year. The next driver that I'm super excited about is Gabriel Bortoleto, and he's really slowly creeped into being one of the most interesting topics of the year for me. I think just the fact that he has been so overlooked and not talked about, yet he's had some really tremendous success in the junior categories, makes me very intrigued to see what he can do this year. He's a true rookie this year with not nearly the same amount of F1 preparation that people like Antonelli and Bearman have had. Bortoleto is, of course, a protege of Alonso, so that's certainly a good person to have in your backing. He's had a really great junior career, like I mentioned, and I really hadn't heard of him until last year when he was starting to be linked with a Formula One seat and when he did bring home the F2 title. From his junior career, he won multiple national titles in karting. He was a race winner in F4 and regional European. He won back-to-back titles in F3 and F2 in his rookie years, which is no easy task by any means. And he was the first driver to win from last to first in F2 in Monza in 2024. So some really great results there. All of those accolades would typically give you a bit more cred in the Formula One world, but he's been a bit overshadowed by Antonelli and Bearman. During those title-winning campaigns, he wasn't the most dominant. He wasn't as dominant as drivers like we've seen, like Russell and Leclerc, but he still showed that he could put together a full season and win a title, which is incredibly important. Concern I have for him is whether or not he will really be able to show off what he has in a struggling Sauber team. It's tough to make a big impression no matter how good you are if you are racing around at the back of the field. Nonetheless, typically great drivers will be able to shine through, and I think he will be able to have some results that you wouldn't expect in a Sauber. I'm expecting Sauber to be a little more competitive this year than last year, so hopefully he won't be trouncing around at the very back of the grid, but I think Sauber will still be the slowest team on the grid. He also has a really great teammate to compare himself against in the form of Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg is a very fast and capable driver, but he is certainly still beatable, so it will be a good benchmark for him. But yeah, overall, I'm just really excited to see Bortoleto, and I think he might be one to watch for 2025. Thank you for making it this far into the video. What do you think of my top 2 rookies that I'm most excited about to start the year? Let me know down in the comments below, and like and subscribe if you are interested. I'd love to hear who you're most excited about in 2025. Now, the next driver that I'm still quite excited to see as well is, of course, Ali Bearman. In contrast to Antonelli, Bortoleto, and Hadjar, Bearman has already had 3 outings in F1 with Ferrari and Haas, so he's had some good experience already to show us what he is capable of. In that time, we've shown that he's a very fast driver, and he's a driver that has caught on to F1 quick. What is still a bit unknown is whether he's a top tier driver like a Norris, Verstappen, or Leclerc, or if he's more of a driver on like an Albon or Sainz level, which is certainly still no mean feat, and that would be a very respectable Grand Prix driver. He's been said to have really impressed with Haas with his speed and maturity and adaptability to F1, and yeah, they're really raving about him in recent times, so I guess that shows that they're really happy about something that he's been doing. His junior career actually wasn't that stunning. He won a couple titles in F4, but failed to win a title in F3 or F2 in either of his 2 years of F2. He only finished 12th in his F2 this year compared to 6th for Antonelli. Of course, he did miss out a couple races because of racing in F1, but he still didn't have a super good F2 season. I don't think Bearman was as highly rated as Antonelli, really until his F1 showings, which really put him on people's radar far more, and really started asking questions about how great he might actually be. His chance to shine in Ferrari and score those points last year, I think, really woke up his F1 hopes even more than they already were, which was awesome for him. 2025 at Haas is going to be a really good environment and test for him to showcase what he can do, and what we can start to see what his ceiling might be. Haas should be, I think, reasonably competitive this year, and Ocon is another teammate that will be tough like Hülkenberg, but is still very beatable, so it will be a good benchmark. If Bearman is able to stay with Ocon for his rookie season, be there or thereabouts with him, and beat him on occasion, then I think we'll have something to be very excited about with Bearman. The next driver that I'm intrigued to see this year is going to be Liam Lawson. Of course, this is going to be his first full season in F1 rather than a couple of short-term outings, but overall I'm not super duper hyped about Lawson, just because we've seen a decent amount of him over the past couple years. Maybe he doesn't even need to be on this list given he's had 11 F1 races under his belt, but he still kind of feels like a rookie because this is his first proper stint in F1 and it's not a short-term thing, at least he hopes so anyways. Hopefully it doesn't get dropped. He had a pretty solid junior career, more similar to a Bearman than an Antonelli in terms of results. He finished second in few F4 championships, did a couple seasons in F3, finishing 11th and 5th, and he did 2 seasons in F2, finishing 9th and 3rd. So, those results at least show that there's some good progression with Lawson from him improving, each year. What is still really unknown, even despite his multiple outings in F1, is his ultimate ceiling. Will he be able to be the second driver that Red Bull need him to be? Can he compete anywhere near Verstappen, and can he have better results than Perez? It's going to be a tough tall order for him to be able to do that, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on him. Being in Red Bull alongside Verstappen immediately makes him one of the most under pressure drivers of the year, and if he's not performing right away, I doubt Red Bull is going to give him as long as they did Perez. So it's going to be very important for him to perform right away, and I'm still excited to see how he fares with the year. The next driver that I'm intrigued to see this year is going to be Jack Doohan. Doohan is arguably already the most under pressure driver and rookie of the year. Alpine is already putting him into a preheated pressure cooker for the year by signing Colapinto and giving absolutely no assurances that they won't replace him. It's one thing for them to sign Colapinto and maybe have that intention of bringing him into the F1 world if needed, or into a full-time race seat if needed, and, fending off the media from questions about Colapinto replacing Doohan. And it's another thing for Alpine to just completely not deny that might be a possibility. So Jack Doohan is super duper under pressure, and he's going to have to perform right off the bat. Otherwise, it might be curtains for him. I think, like with most people, I'm not overly excited to see how Jack Doohan does, just because he doesn't seem to be a real superstar and he hasn't had quite as much hype behind him. His junior career was generally okay to start with and then got a bit better. He didn't have too much success in F4, with the highest finish in the championship of 5th in British F4. Things improved a bit in F3, where he finished 2nd and had an okay 6th in F2, and has been Alpine's reserve driver since then. It just kind of feels like a foregone conclusion that he's going to get replaced, so it almost just feels pointless to get too excited because Colapinto is just constantly looking over his shoulder. I think even Alpine hasn't had too much faith in him, otherwise they would have put him in the car and after the whole Alonso and Piastri fiasco. Overall, I don't want to see Doohan fail or get axed immediately. I'm just not too intrigued by his chances in F1. However, it would make for a really great story if he rocks up in F1 and proves everybody wrong and puts Alpine in a really challenging position. The last driver I want to talk about is Isack Hadjar. Hadjar on paper had better end results and better seasons in F2 and F3 than Lawson and Doohan, but he still seemed to be really overlooked by Red Bull. He finished 3rd in French F4, 5th in Formula Regional, 4th in F3, and had a respectable 2nd in F2 behind Bortoleto. It really feels like Hadjar was just a last-minute option when Red Bull realized that they didn't have anybody else to put in the car. Apparently he was less than impressive in his FP1 debut for Red Bull in Silverstone last year, but he did have a better FP1 outing in 2024 for Red Bull, so that maybe helped his chances a little bit more after having a better outing there. He seems to have a reputation similar to Yuki because I guess he's pretty fast, but he is a bit hot-headed and has difficulty controlling his emotions over the radio during the race. Kind of feels like we'll see 2 of the same driver in RB this season, and we might get some very interesting radio messages between the two. So I'm sure we'll be seeing the both of them come up in the live feed quite a lot this season. I'm not sure anyone is touting Isack Hadjar to be a superstar of the future, but he is apparently quite quick, and it'll be important for him to show that speed immediately, and it'll be important for him to show emotional control and maturity if he has any hopes of staying at RB, let alone having a shot at Red Bull in the future. He's another driver that is under a ton of pressure, just given that he is a Red Bull driver. But he's going to be under a ton of pressure. I think if anyone in the driver Red Bull pool is to get dropped mid-season, he's probably a very likely candidate, especially with Arvid Lindblad looming in the background. So while I'm not outright the most excited to see like a Hadjar or a Doohan, I think they could be really interesting storylines of the year because they have so much to gain if they are performing better than anybody anticipates them to do. So it will be really interesting to see how all of that plays out, and really overall I'm just excited to see every one of these rookies, and I can't wait to see how the season plays out. Alright, so those are my thoughts on F1 2025's Rookies of the Year. Let me know who you are most excited about down in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you are interested, and I am ready to kick off this 2025 season. Give me a follow on social media. I'm on X as Last to First Real, first spelled F1 RST, and on Instagram as Last to First. Once again, first spelled F1 RST. So thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.